Good evening, folks. This is Andy Petraza with Special Effects Academy on the start of the week session for the Forex trading room on April 14th of 2019. We will go through our usual agenda. I'll look at the prior week, our currency strength meter for the past month and the past week, fundamental announcements scheduled, and analysis of the major pairs on the daily charts, any setups we see in progress, and a few words in conclusion. We'll start off by looking at the respective ledgers. The long-term account, we have not placed any trades on that one. It has been set up. We'll be sending out instructions on how to link to the long-term account later this week. The intermediate term account, we have open 4 trades. 3 of them are still open. One of them did close out with a loss of 100.1 pips weighted, and dollar loss at this point of $65.51. The other 3 trades, as I mentioned, remain open at different levels of pip. They were negative as of Friday, nothing seriously negative, but negative nonetheless. And the short-term account, we did have a negative week with a loss of a little bit under $70 with a negative 3.72% on 178.8 pips loss weighted pip average. The trades, well, you can see them on the screen. We only had one winner as the yen started getting weaker towards the end of the week. So that was a little bit of a recovery trade, but it came too late in the week to do us any good. We are in a yen weakness position on the intermediate account, which may pay off. We'll see how that evolves as this new week starts off. So, notes and opportunities for improvement. We did have a very sluggish week with no clear trend on most of the Forex pairs. As I mentioned, yen weakness seen towards the end of the week, which we did capitalize on, but it just came too late to do us much good. We did miss a really good Euro-Swiss move. It went bullish, and unfortunately, we didn't believe that much in the trade, so that was our bad. We'll try to do a little bit better in that regard, but you can't catch every single trade. But this one particularly hurts because it was alerting quite nicely. It just, with the uncertainty in the Brexit scenarios that were playing out, we just didn't take that trade. It was a little bit too risky for our taste, but in retrospect, it should have been taken, even if at a smaller position size, just to take advantage of what might have happened. I already covered the intermediate trade that closed against us. Brexit has been pushed off until possibly October 31st. That's the ultimate deadline that the European Union Council gave the Brits. But that doesn't mean that Brexit can't happen next month. Theresa May is still targeting May 22nd as her drop-dead date, because the UK does not want to participate in European Union elections, which are scheduled for May 23rd. So the UK's government is going to try, and they've been meeting nonstop since last week. So they did continue working over the weekend to try to iron out some sort of deal that will approve a plan that they can go back to European Union and actually exit by May 22nd. So despite the fact that we're going potentially till October 31st, that is not written in stone and will have to be traded accordingly. The Australian economy is continuing to show some signs of further weakness. There's been a lot of dovish comments coming out of the institutions in Australia. So we'll take a look at how that evolves as well in the coming weeks. And last but not least, oil does continue to rally, and the CAD continues not to. So oil and CAD are not showing the correlation that they normally show. The CAD continues to either move sideways or in some cases weaken instead of getting stronger on what has been a 4-month rally in oil price to date. So a little bit puzzling, but again, the market will do whatever the market does. We're just along for the ride. So we'll continue to keep an eye open for a good opportunity with the Canadian pairs, but we'll have to be trading them very carefully as I mentioned, they're just not moving the way logic would indicate. Let's take a look at our relative strength meter for the past month and the past week. They look very similar. If we look at the two charts, you can almost superimpose one on the other. We see that the Australian had a very good month, despite the comments I made before, and a pretty good week. But as I mentioned, it is starting to show some signs of weakness. The Canadian improved as well for the month, but had a sideways week, as I mentioned, and we can see that on the chart to the right. It did indeed lose ground against the Australian, the euro, and the Kiwi, even as it gained slightly against the other currencies. The Swiss continues to drop on the weekly and also somewhat on the monthly, though it did gain ground on about half of the currencies out there. The euro is middle of the pack. The pound really dropped on the month, but had a reasonably sideways week. And that's pretty understandable given that Brexit got pushed out. The market suddenly went sideways on the pound as nobody knew what that really meant. Is it good for the pound? Is it bad for the pound? And indeed, right now, we still don't know. We're waiting to see what the ultimate market direction is going to be. However, if we do get a Brexit pushed out until October, that will calm some of the sentiment out there. And the pound may indeed start trending in either direction. So we're going to be keeping an eye open for that. The yen on the monthly, middle of the pack. On the weekly, it significantly lost ground. And as I mentioned, we did pick up a nice amount of pips towards the end of the week on yen weakness. The Kiwi is gaining ground against everybody except the Aussie and the Euro for the week that just ended, but had a reasonably bearish 30 days. And indeed, I continue to see weakness as the general direction of the New Zealand dollar. The US dollar, middle of the pack for the week, and really not all that good on the monthly either. So we do have a lot of sideways action. And last but not least, silver and gold were reasonably bearish for the past week, and indeed very bearish for the past month. That is our RSM. And we'll move into our fundamental announcements scheduled for this week. Not a whole lot of happenings, but we will be trading two of them. So we have the Reserve Bank of Australia minutes coming out on Monday at 9:30 p.m. And we have to take these with a grain of salt. The Australians haven't been the best at keeping to the schedules, or the schedulers have been reporting this wrong. So I will verify this tomorrow throughout the day. And we will be trading that one, whatever hour it happens to come out, we'll be trading that one. As I mentioned, I am keeping a close eye on the Aussie because it is showing signs of further weakness. And this might be the catalyst that makes it move. Nothing much on Monday, or at least nothing that I would like to trade. Wednesday, we have the Australian employment numbers. And again, I'm looking very closely at the Australian to see if we can pick something up there. And that pretty much wraps it up for the week. So we'll have those two fundamental announcements Monday and Wednesday. And again, I'll be verifying the hours these are actually coming out, so we're not wasting any time. And with that, we're going to move into the charts. Oil is the first chart we're going to be looking at. And as I mentioned, it's just done an incredibly impressive rally from the end of last year through today. Gave us a new high this week, this past week. And well, that trend shows no sign of weakening. It's already hit my target of 64.25. That acted as resistance, but it's still nicely supported by the trend line. The only surprising thing here is that we haven't seen a significant rally accordingly from the Canadian dollar. So as I mentioned earlier, that correlation the Canadian and oil seems to be broken right now. Eventually, it will reestablish itself, but again, we don't trade on predictions or anything like that. We trade on actual price movement. So we'll have to wait for that to actually happen. Euro dollar is in a downward channel, and we did have a new low in the last couple of months, and it almost but not quite tested that low in the past couple of weeks. However, we see the euro gaining strength this past week or two, and it is trying to make its way up towards the top of the channel. We may trade this one in that direction if it continues to perform. Very similar to what the Euro Swiss did, and we missed that one. Again, shame on us. So we're going to be looking at this one and see if it still has room to move towards the top of that channel. So in the next day or so, we'll see if the trend is continuing, and we will jump on it either short term or intermediate term. Pound dollar, of course, we won't be trading this one until we have a little bit more decisiveness coming out of the UK's parliament. So it is sitting on a line of support. I'm very hopeful that we will get some movement out of the pound, that some sort of trend is going to establish itself up or down, but we'll wait for it to actually begin before we place any trades. USD/JPY, already mentioned, the yen weakened significantly the last couple of days last week, and we did trade a couple of pairs in that direction, taking profit on the short-term account. On this pair specifically, we did trade the USD/JPY and caught, I forget how many pips, 80 pips or so. On this move. So we'll see if that continues this week. If we do see a continuation of yen weakness, we're going to be going significantly in on and taking advantage of that trend. So the next 24 hours or so should tell us everything we need to know, if not sooner. USD Canadian, very sideways, again, inexplicably not reacting to oil price. I know there are political issues happening in Trudeau's government in Canada, but even that really doesn't explain to me why it's not reacting. So we'll see at some point it will wake up, and it'll either burst out of that wedge towards the bottom, my likely scenario, or something else will happen and make it move towards the top. We really don't care which. I just wanted to break out of that wedge so it gives us a good signal. USD Swiss continues, the Swiss continues weakening against the dollar. My bias, of course, on this pair has been bearish for quite a while, but it is clearly going up right now. So we are taking a leave of absence on the USD Swiss, but when it does head towards the areas of support right below it, we'll be jumping back into this one. I just don't think there's enough room towards the top to make it worth our while to go long. Aussie dollar, again, very sideways, and we can see that's been sideways for quite a while, pretty much since August, September of last year. And right now, pretty much in the middle of a sideways channel, and we're waiting to see if that weakness that I mentioned actually fulfills, so we can go short on this one, or, as I said, really don't care the direction so long as we have a good move. So I'm looking out for a trend establishing itself on a lot of these currency crosses right now. They seem to be all getting ready for something, and well, we'll just have to wait until it actually happens, but we'll be jumping in as soon as something does. Kiwi dollar also sideways and resting, or it was resting on Thursday, I should say, on a level of support, and then it bounced back up towards the bottom of the trend line. So in very much in limbo, it could go in either direction. And again, while it's sideways, we're not going to be trying to trade it too much. I do have an intermediate trade open on this pair, bearish. carrying a very small loss at this point. And we did have that trend line break on the daily. So that's the direction we're taking it. It's got a reasonably tight stop. So we'll take a look at that one. If it looks like we still got a chance to see it go down the next day or so, should tell us that we will leave it open. If not, at some point, we'll move that money into something that has a higher likelihood of fulfilling in the medium term. Aussie Canadian, another one that I really, really would like to short, but it's just not moving in the right direction. So we've been leaving it alone. It is very much at resistance near the top. And well, that's what it's doing right now. We do have a pending order on the intermediate account to take us in short if it drops to the 0.94. It just simply refused to go anywhere near that this past week. We'll see how the new week opens. Euro Swiss, and this is my my shame. As I said, we should have taken this trade as it moved up towards the trend line, but with the Brexit uncertainty, we decided not to trade this pair. Bad mistake. But again, we can't pretend to catch every single move, but this one in particular looks so good that it's just disappointing that we didn't take it. So we'll be revising some of our entries for the future, and even if we don't take a normal size position, we can trade a smaller lot size and still get into some of these moves. So my bad, recognized, and it will be corrected moving forward. Euro pound, well, it's the euro pair, it's a pound pair. It's going perfectly sideways because the market really doesn't know what to make of the latest Brexit extension. Nobody knows what that means for anyone other than that, well, other than nothing. Nobody really knows what anything means with Brexit anymore. So we're back to the technical on this one now that the fundamentals have been pushed out, maybe for a month, maybe for more until October. If we do see a movement in either direction, we will start taking it just simply based on the technicals. Euro JPY, we're already long on the Euro JPY after it broke the trend line that we're seeing there on the screen. So it did break bearish. We've got an intermediate trade open, and we'll see how that one evolves. Two of the trades are carrying a negligible loss of like around 10 pips, and this is one of them. So we're pretty much at break even on this trade, and we'll see how long this trend line break lasts. We're going to leave it open for as long as it continues moving in the right direction. So more on that later in the week. For now, we're long, and we'll be sticking to that trade. Euro Canadian, not much to be said here. It's at the top of a wedge. It's also at resistance. The euro is getting stronger, and the Canadian, for whatever reason, is not. So this one is going to be a little bit tricky to trade since they're really not reacting the way they should. So I may give this one a pass. After I think we have one trade open on the intermediate term on this one, but we'll be monitoring that one very carefully because I'm just not trusting the cat anymore since it is not behaving the way logic would indicate. And that one is the other one I think that's at break even, so no huge movement so far. Pound JPY, again, a pound pair very sideways these past 2 or 3 weeks as Brexit continues to be pushed out. The yen weakened on towards the end of the week, as I've been mentioning all along. It didn't move so much on this pair as it did on some of the others, simply because, again, of the uncertainty. Could go in either direction. Again, this is not going to be my preferred pair to trade. Indeed, none of the pound pairs are going to be high on my radar until we have a little bit more of a direction coming out of the House of Commons in the UK. Aussie JPY, yen pair, very nice move. We didn't trade this one. Again, we traded USD JPY and Euro JPY. We could have traded this one, but I've been giving this one a break since it's been living very flat for most of the past 4 months. Might be a time to change that. So again, if we see that yen trend continuing, we will start getting into all of these yen pairs and see how far up we can ride them. Euro New Zealand, this was our one losing trade on the intermediate account as it went up, hit our stop loss, and then pretty much went back down. So a little bit disappointing, but also it's not moving much. It's pretty much flat for the prior week. It ended up where it opened, so not a whole lot of movement, just a lot of sideways action. I still think this one has a good potential to move, preferably down, but we'll be waiting for the right triggers. We'll be taking every trigger any of these pairs gives us, but they have to match our risk management. So we'll see if we get back into the Euro New Zealand or not. Pound Canadian, not much to see there. It's the pound, it's the CAD. Nobody knows which way any of them are going, and we'll probably be staying away from this one unless we see a very good technical trigger to trade it up or down. At this point, we don't really care, but we needed to break out of the current range it's bound up in. And last but not least, the pound Swiss, another pound pair. The Swiss has been weakening in general. The pound has been flat. This one has not moved much as a result. And if we do get a trend line break, again, I would love to trade all these pairs down, but they have to give us a good technical trigger before we take those trades. But this one has a very nice potential once we see an end to Brexit, which God knows when that's going to be. It has a nice potential for at least 500, 600 pips on a move back towards its prior low. And that's the end of the charts for now. The setups we see in progress, and this might be a little bit repetitive because I've been talking about it, but the pound pairs Brexit moved out till possibly end of October. We might be seeing a recovery given mob psychology and wishful thinking. If October is like completely off people's radar at this point, nobody's thinking of anything beyond the next month. So having Brexit moved out past people's immediate radar, we may see the pound regaining some strength until we get closer to October. And again, all that's assuming that Theresa May doesn't manage to iron out a deal and get the UK out by May 22nd. Euro pairs, the euro moved very bullish this past week. No idea if it's going to continue, but we'll be keeping an eye on it. Canadian pairs, not going to repeat that. Oil, CAD, blah, blah. Japanese pairs, not sure why they weakened significantly this past week, but we did see breakouts on the technicals, and we'll be monitoring closely in case we see the beginning of a trend. The secret here is to get in at a trend as soon as we recognize it as such, and then ride it for as long as it goes. It doesn't matter if it's a month or a year. Ride it for as long as it goes. That's where you're going to get the bulk of your profit at any given time. And last but not least, while I'm not really keeping my hopes up on the Australian, I have been hearing a lot of things coming out of the Australian institutions that are pointing towards weakness. And since we have those two fundies this week, we'll see if either one of those is going to be the domino that starts toppling all the other dominoes. So if we see any more confirmation of Australian weakness, it could cause a fire sale, and we could see those Australian pairs just rush towards the bottom. So we'll be trading those live as they happen, and we'll see what the regular trading cycle brings us this coming week. And last but not least, a few words in conclusion, and I've already said it, we see a lot of potential trends starting to form across multiple crosses on the daily chart. So we're going to be keeping an eye on those and setting ourselves up, as I said, for future success, even if the ride may get bumpy at times. So remember, when you're trading these pairs, they're not going to magically go in one direction because we entered the trade. They're going to continue zigzagging. The important thing is whether they're zigzagging up or zigzagging down consistently. That's what a trend is going to be. But you do have to place some of those dollars at risk. Otherwise, you're not going to be in those trades that make the big money. There is no predicting. There's no sure thing. It's all a matter of playing the odds as safely as we can. And of course, of staying in the game till we get a decent hand to play. And that's going to be it for me on the start of the week, unless anybody has any comments or questions. And while I'm here, Miguel, happy birthday, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Hope your day was wonderful.
Oh yeah, I'm about to go out right after this one as well. So.
Excellent. Okay. Anybody comments or questions?
None,
Okie
sir.
dokie. Then thank you very much, Miguel. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you, sir. I will.
Take care, man. Bye.
Bye bye.